As we have been working on the fireman's axe, I have had lots of questions about tool choices, specifically why the power hammer and not the hydraulic press, or why the hydraulic press and not the power hammer. So I thought I would try and address that a little bit. Unfortunately, there is no simple answer. A lot of it is just what I feel like doing at the moment. There's no scientific reason in a lot of cases, but sometimes my choice is based on some practical reasons that at least apply at that moment in my shop. In general, most of my thought process in the shop comes from hammer and anvil style thinking. That's what I think about. I think about how do you forge things between a hammer and an anvil, which the power hammer is a hammer and an anvil. So the thinking that transfers from this tool to this tool is really quite a bit the same. As a result, I tend to think more in terms of the power hammer than I do the press. That doesn't mean the press is not a good tool. It's just this is more what I think of because it more directly relates to this. But part of it is also efficiency and convenience. The power hammer is right here, the forge is there, the anvil's there, the power hammer's here. It's not more than a few steps from one to the other, and it's very quick, it's very efficient. The power hammer is plugged in and ready to go all the time. It takes just a second to turn it on and get to work under it, unless I need to change dies, and that doesn't take too long either. Now, while I consider that the press isn't quite as convenient as the power hammer, the truth is that it is actually closer to the forge and no further from the anvil than the power hammer is, so it is possible to get to the press pretty quickly. Now, unfortunately, the press does not have a dedicated circuit for it anymore. Or I should say, it doesn't have a dedicated circuit where the press is. I have a dedicated circuit over there where it used to be, which is next to where the power hammer is. But when I put that power hammer in and had to modify the shop and rearrange things to make room for a bigger power hammer and not block the entire new addition by putting tools like a hydraulic press right in front of that addition where it used to be, instead the little giant power hammer is back there where it's still easily accessible, and now where the press would have been is a walkway. So it doesn't fit there anymore. Now it's over here. I have a dedicated plug over there, but the cord doesn't reach and it would be stretched across my work area where it would be a trip hazard, and I don't like that. So I plug it in over here where I plug in my heat treat oven, but I have to think ahead far enough to stretch the cord over there, plug it in, and if I'm in the middle of the heat, the power hammer's right there, flip the switch, go to work, versus plugging the press in and getting the press ready to go. Again, that doesn't make the press a bad tool. It's just not the tool that I'm in the habit of going to as a default. I have to kind of think ahead for the press. Plus, as I said, I think in terms of hammer and anvil more so than I do press. And to get the best efficiency out of a press, you really need to have a thought process more geared towards a hydraulic press. Most of the tooling I make for the press is very similar to the tooling I make under a power hammer, which may not be the most efficient use of a press. Thinking of more specialized tooling and more precision tooling would probably up the usefulness of the press, and eventually I'll get to that point. It just hasn't happened so far. Another reason I frequently go to the power hammer other than the press is that the hammerhead is only in contact for one blow and then it comes up, and it's off the work for longer than it is in contact with the work. That means you can see the work better. Every time that head is up, you can see exactly what's happening under the power hammer, whereas the press, it's a long, steady squeeze, and you can't see real well what's actually happening. You have to trust that the tools are doing what you designed them to do. But under the power hammer, I can make little micro adjustments. I can adjust things in and out, side to side. I can tip them a little bit if I'm getting a little bit off. In a single heat, I can work on multiple parts of the process, and I can use multiple handheld tools under the press. Now, those are handheld tools on handles, not tools like you'd hold a hand punch or a hand chisel. But that allows a great deal of versatility. You can do a lot of things in a single heat. And under the press, you're pretty much obligated to whatever tool is in there, whatever impression it's going to give you, whatever that effect is. The work cools off very quickly because it's in constant contact with the dies, and that's worse during the winter. During the summer, it's not quite as bad. The press tends to run a little bit slower anyways in the winter, so the work cools off faster, and you usually only get to reposition the work for a limited number of times by comparison to how often you can reposition the work in the power hammer. Now the press does provide huge amounts of force. If you're trying to draw something out roughly, doing that under drawing dies with the press can be very quick, very efficient, but it's not very precise, not very controlled, unless you've got really good tooling for the press. And again, I think that's one place that you really need to have tooling designed to do exactly what you want it to do. I don't know what's going on with the brightness on the camera. I don't know if you see that in the video or not, but it seems like the little screen I'm looking at gets brighter and dimmer and brighter and dimmer and brighter and dimmer, and I got no idea what that's about. It might have something to do with clouds passing in front of the sun over the skylights. I hope it's not as annoying to you as it seems to be to me, but it's really distracting. And anyways, what was I talking about? My press is a home-built press. The dies are a quick change system. I can change dies very quickly, but that means they don't fit as precisely as they could. Now, I've seen people using the Anyang presses, and they have a T-slot system that looks like it can have really good tolerances, very tight dies, no slop. You get them in there, you get them lined up, you tighten the bolts down. Things shouldn't move. It should be a much more precise thing. And if I had a press like that, I might use it more for some of these things. But my homemade press doesn't have quite that precision built into it, even though it is a very powerful, very useful machine. I like the press. I don't plan to get rid of it in favor of the power hammer, but I'll probably still use the power hammer more often. Now, another problem I have had with the press is when I'm punching eyes or drifting eyes under the press, it tends to deform them. The amount of pressure you get from the press is so great, it bulges things out to the side. And I think I've mentioned this before, but in doing so, it can create a lot of what's called punch suck or suck in that pushes the walls down. You can see this isn't straight across here, but it's got a big depression in here, the big crater, and this is hard to forge out. Even though I can punch this eye in a single heat, it's going to take me lots more time to correct this problem than it takes me to punch the eye under the power hammer, and I don't get this under the power hammer, and that's just due to the power of the press. The other problem, and I think you can see that in the video, is because it has such force and it's stretching this wall during that process, it has cracked this axe head. This is a useless axe head. I don't know why I still have it around. But it's put a stress crack in here, and that is purely due to the amount of force from the press. It's not forging the material as much as it is stretching the material while punching and drifting the eye. Now, creating these fullers under the press, I think, is a great way to go, and that's something I really prefer the press for. So as you can see, there's not some grand reason that I always go to the power hammer over the press or would always go to the press over the power hammer. They are both useful tools. They are both really handy to have in your shop if you can afford to have both tools. And I realize most people can't even afford one of them, much less both. And when you finally decide you've reached that point in your blacksmithing evolution that you would like to have bigger equipment, you have to decide which one's going to work best for you. And I strongly encourage you to go to other people's shops, see what equipment they have, see what they use it for, and let that help you make your decision. There's never an easy answer, no matter which one you get. Somewhere in the back of your head, you're always going to be saying, gee, I wonder if that other one would have done this better. So remember, I've been collecting tools for over 35 years. It takes that long to get all this stuff. I don't think if you're just starting out, you need to worry about having a press or a power hammer. But when you finally make that decision, you finally think that's what you want, your elbows and your shoulders are wore out, you need something to take some of the stress off your body, you need to be faster, more efficient to increase profits because now you're running a business. Just think about what it is you're doing. If you're making pattern welded steel, a press might be better than a power hammer. If you're doing ornamental work, a power hammer might be better than a press. Both of them have times where they are the cleaner, more efficient tool, and times where they are a little bit cruder and not quite as efficient, just depending on what it is you're doing with that tool. So I hope some of this makes sense. If you're somebody who is building a press and you're really disappointed because I don't use the press more, don't take it personally. It's not because I don't like the press, it's just because I really like the power hammer. Anyways, I hope that makes some sense to you, and I hope it answers the questions some of you folks have had. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, I would love it if you hit that subscribe button down below. If you want to get notifications for when I post new videos, there's a little bell icon down there next to the subscribe button. Ring that bell as well, and you'll get notifications when new videos come out. Stick around, watch a few of the other videos, share the videos with your friends, but then by all means, make time in your day to get out to your shop, make something, but stay safe, wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next one.